I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Ian.
And we've come to Madeira to find out once and for all what the best wildlife and landscape travel kit really is.
I've got the Nikon Pro kits.
I've got a content creator kit with a huge variety of cameras, and our weight limit is 5 kilograms. So let's find out what we've got.
I've got 6.9.
Now, I want to talk you through my kit because it's incredibly different from Ian's. Obviously, I've also stuck to the 5 kilogram weight limit, and that includes our bags. Mine's an earth bag. In terms of kit, I wanted to go very different from Ian, and I wanted to do that so I could show you the flexibility of what you can bring if you downsize your camera a little and the lenses that you bring with you. And the way that I started that with the 5 kilogram weight restriction is I knew that I wanted to bring the Fuji X100 VI. And the reason for that is so I can get wide angle shots of landscapes that look a little bit different, maybe a bit surreal, something that's quite easy and quick to get, and also maybe some selfies just because it's a fun trip and that's really enjoyable. The second item that I knew I didn't want to travel without was the DJI Nano. And the reason for that is because it's waterproof, and there's a lot of things that we can film in Madeira around water. We can put it in puddles, you can put it in the sea. If there are wildlife shots or anything that's a coral reef in the place that you're visiting, this is a great addition to your wildlife and travel filmmaking kit. So the thing that's going to give me the edge here is finally I knew I wanted to bring a drone. So I've chosen the Mini 5 Pro because I knew that it wouldn't weigh too much. The restrictions in most countries mean that a small drone is flyable without so many permits or red tape, and it allows me to beat Ian in a little bit of a sneaky way. So all of that kit that I've just mentioned added together is about 3 kilograms of cards and batteries. So that leaves me 2 kilograms for my camera and lens. Now that might seem like not a lot when you're thinking of photographing birds or landscapes, but thankfully Canon have a 100 to 500 f/4.5 to 7.1, which gives me a huge amount of flexibility, and with the color science from the Canon, I'm pretty sure I'm onto a winner. And then I've gone with the R8 that comes in around 460 grams. So altogether, this camera setup is actually under the 2,000 grams with cards and batteries included, and I had a little bit of spare weight for a spare battery. You could also go for an OM Systems camera. They have really great flexibility when it comes to macro versus landscapes and focus stacking, focus peaking. So there's lots of features within that that would do you a lot of favors, and their cameras also weigh an incredibly small amount. That new 50 to 200mm lens, for example, would do you a lot of favors on a trip like this. So to summarize, 461, 1,053, 52, 521, card and battery included, and my drone comes in at 261. So I'm well within the weight limit, and I could even bring an extra lens.
So let's talk about what I've got in my kit bag, beginning with what I've got in my hand. So I've got a Nikon Z9, I've got a Nikon Nikkor 100 to 400, 4.5 to 5.6 zoom, and in my kit bag, I've got a 2x teleconverter as well as a 24-70-2. When we were tasked with building a kit for this trip, we were told we had a 5 kilogram weight limit. In my head, I was already getting a bit worried about that, considering what I wanted to bring, bearing in mind what the conditions would be here in Madeira. So number one, I knew I wanted pro level kit. So I wanted something that was pretty bomb proof as well as weather sealed. That's exactly what I've done with my kit. So let's begin with the Nikon Z9. The Z9 comes in at 1,230 grams. The lens, pretty hefty, 1,435 grams. The 24-70 comes in at 675 grams, and the teleconverter weighs about 240 grams. Now, if you include a couple of filters as well as my bag, I've actually gone a bit over by about 1.5 kilograms. But that just gives you an idea as to if you want to build something like this, it is going to cost you a little bit. So the bag, I couldn't really do much about. The bag had to be able to carry everything that I had safely and also comfortably as well. But also the conditions in Madeira, even where we stood right now, I think is beginning to pay off. So I already feel pretty safe that I can walk around here, and even if I drop my camera, I hope I don't, but even if I drop my camera, it's going to have my back because of that rugged build.
The nice thing about having lots of different kit is if you're shooting for Instagram or TikTok, there's like a million different things that you can shoot and different ways of shooting. So one of the reasons I compromised on my camera was because of the DJI Nano. You can also get a GoPro 360, you can get a GoPro standard action camera, you can get an Insta 360, you can get a DJI 360. The options are pretty endless. One of the great things about them is that they're waterproof and resistant to damage. So I'm going to get some really fun shots that Ian's camera cannot get. So these are really simple to use. What I'm probably going to do is start with my feet, press record, I'm going to move forward. Now the screen is wireless, so I'm actually going to continue to hold the screen to prevent me having any problems. My boots are waterproof, as is the camera. So now I can get the camera wet. So the thing is yeah, obviously if you're taking really serious landscape and birding shots, you probably want a bigger camera setup, but for Instagram and TikTok and for the content creator lifestyle for travel, this is going to be my next best friend. It seems I've forgotten that I am not in fact waterproof, so
Okay, so after telling you what our kits are all about, I think it's worth talking a little bit more in depth about our cameras and our lenses. So I'll start with my Z9 here. So the Z9 is a pro level camera. It has a 45 megapixel full frame sensor and it's wrapped in this beautiful weather sealed pro body. And attached to it right now, I've got the 100 to 400, 4.5 to 5.6 Z zoom. And it's worth mentioning that both of these are weather sealed. This does have OIS and my camera does have 5 stops of IBIS, giving a combined total IBIS output of between 5 and 6 stops. Obviously that depends on which lens you're using, but on this combination, it's roughly that.
Now, I only have 24 megapixels. I have a 100, 500, f4.5 to 7.1 aperture, and I've got no in-body stabilization, so all of that added together might make you think that I don't have a great setup. But not only do I have steadier hands than Ian, but I also have nicer color science, arguably.
And also it's important to mention as well, Tiffany, I think that my setup weighs considerably more than yours. And obviously when we're doing something like we are today, it's quite hot, it's very hilly. I think comfort in shooting does actually count for a lot, don't you think?
I completely agree. And whilst I love the shots that Ian's been getting, and he is an incredible photographer in every way, my favorite part of every trip, as the guys that I work with will tell you, is taking fun selfies and having memories to come home with. So because of that weight difference, I have the X100 6, which is 40 megapixels, so matches that like for like, giving me the ability to crop in. And I can take lots of really fun pictures on the go, like this one of Ian. Fantastic.
Conversely, if I want to have a change of frame to my huge and very zoomed in 100 to 400, I've got to go through the hassle of going into my bag, putting my 24 to 70, taking my lens off, potentially leaving my sensor exposed to dust and God knows what else. So it is a bit of a hassle, whereas Tiffany can literally just pull out that X100 6 from her pocket and start shooting with a more familiar focal length. So pros and cons.
So tell me where I need to go.
Yeah, about there. Maybe
Okay.
come back a bit, don't get run over, please. A bit further.
Are you sure?
A bit further. A bit
Really?
further. A bit further. Yeah, you're fine there, I think.
I'm not really having that much fun.
All right, let's go, come on.
So earlier we talked about how to choose a camera, and I was debating between the OM system and the Canon R8. And actually what's really interesting is the OM is really great for macro, and in this particular landscape I'm struggling to get those shots because I don't have the OM with me. So it's always worth noting what you like to shoot and how you shoot when you're picking your kit.
Now the Z9 has pretty awesome autofocus, which is going to help you capture birds in flight and actually keep them in focus when you're tracking them in the sky. However, it's important to mention that you don't necessarily need to spend thousands and thousands on your kit to do that. However, you will need reach. Reach is very important. By reach, I mean a very high top end of your zoom, 300, 400, even 500 mil. That's incredibly important as birds are not likely to be very, very close to you. However, it's important to mention that you can get inexpensive zooms regardless of what camera brand you are shooting on. It might take a little bit more perseverance if you don't have fancy autofocus tracking like you have on the Z9, but perseverance can always pay off as well.
We've stopped in Corheta because behind me is an incredible view. And whilst we've talked a lot about why pro-end kit might be better for you, let's talk about the benefits of the R8, because the colours on this camera are stunning. It's coping really well in this light and in this climate. It's incredibly light, so I don't really feel burdened by the camera. I don't feel that I'm having a difficult time shooting or that my back hurts. So it also means I'm more flexible when it comes to hiking, getting up to views like this. The thing about a Canon for me is that the colours, when you've got light trickling through really biodiverse landscapes like this, is it really captures the essence of where you are. We've also seen some birds, I think it was a buzzard, and because I've got 40 frames per second in that electronic shutter mode, I'm not noticing the lack of in-body stabilisation. Plus, because it's an RF lens, there's a lot of stabilisation within the lens itself. So some of those shots are on the screen for you now. Let's see if you can do better than that, Ian. Even though I'm only on 24 megapixels, truthfully, when I zoom in to that 500 mark, it is incredibly sharp. I'm not having any issues, so hopefully you'll see that in some of these test shots that I'm taking. So yeah, not a problem at all. So the real reason I compromised on my camera kit is for the drone. In a location like this, it's almost impossible to not want to take that drone up and get some really stunning aerial photographs and video. We talked about social media earlier. Obviously for videos, drones are incredible. It really adds an extra level to your filmmaking. But even just for photography, you couldn't really get better shots. We've talked a lot about photography, and you're probably interested in the fact that most of the cameras I've bought primarily for video. And the reason for that is because they all shoot in at least 4K, which means that I have the capability of getting both beautiful video and screen grabs from that video to use as stills. Now with Ian, he's probably shooting for his website or for a book. However, I'm likely to present all of my content like this, which means that I'm shooting for Instagram, and suddenly it changes everything. The thing about coming to places like Madeira as a photographer or a content creator is remembering that what you see online is not necessarily what you see. So, we're here in Fannel Forest. As you'll see behind me, it is stunning. But to my left is a car park, to my right is a lot of people and tourists, and right in front of me is probably one of the worst views I've ever seen. However, there's also the best.
I think one of the really fun things about shooting in the way that we're shooting, or at least that I'm shooting today, in using equipment that I'm not really used to shooting, such as zooms, especially telephoto zooms, is that it kind of allows you a bit of free rein to actually experiment a little bit, considering that you're not using kit that you would normally be accustomed to. Now, when I use a 50mm or a 28mm lens, which is what I normally use, I kind of know exactly what I need to do, where I need to stand, how my eye normally sees frames in terms of 28 and 50mm. However, when you're using something like a zoom, using the zoom ring can be a fairly abstract concept. You don't really know where you're landing. You kind of just putting the camera to your eye, zooming, and then you get a frame. So for me, that gives me a really good chance to experiment a little bit with different focal lengths, standing a little bit further back, a little bit closer, and seeing what you get, considering that you're shooting maybe in a way that you wouldn't normally be shooting. And actually, I'm finding it a lot of fun.
So when you come to a place like Fannel Forest, you can actually get incredibly close to the local animals like the cows. But being a photographer for me is about respect and enjoyment, and I'm not going to enjoy myself if I'm not thinking about the animals or the people around me. So I'm going to take a really beautiful picture of this stunning cow, but I'm not going to get too close, and I'm not going to touch him at all because this is his land and I'm on it. Our time in Madeira has come to an end, and I want to talk to you a little bit about how I got on with such varying kit. There were definitely moments where having a lot of kit was a bit of a hassle, just changing stuff over, but because a lot of it's pocketable, I found it really easy to kind of access it as long as I was wearing enough pockets.
Well, I think my kit was a little bit simpler than yours in terms of maybe getting your head around it, if you know what I mean. I think I've always found that if you have too many options, you can be a little bit like a rabbit in the headlights a little bit. So, but saying that, I did have a lens that I'm not really used to shooting, a long telephoto. However, it was lovely to have it. I'm actually pleased I didn't choose anything heavier, as obviously it is quite a challenge having just one body and having to constantly change in between. Not to mention then adding the telephoto converter, sorry, the 2x converter, which kind of makes things a little bit complex and sometimes can be slow moving. So, so it was an interesting experience for me from that point of view.
But genuinely, I think my advice to you would be to really consider what you're doing. I'm definitely a fun time photographer. I just really enjoy being outside and taking pictures of interesting things. So because of that, I just kind of want to have the flexibility to take pictures of whatever I want, whenever I want. Obviously not everybody is like that, but you also then have to factor in that because you have low megapixels, because your kit isn't matching, because the color science won't match, you probably won't make a project out of it, but you might get some really fun shots of each other.
This is very true. I think the trick is not to overthink it too much. I think a lot of people do want to come on holiday and just enjoy their time and not really think too much about the equipment. That can become a burden. So if you're going somewhere pretty cool that's maybe a little bit unusual or unlike somewhere else that you might go, don't worry about the kit too much. I think you'll always come back with something that you're gonna like.
I completely agree, and I think the real takeaway for me is to carry what you need and what you're used to using, because in locations like this, missing the shot because you were messing around with a camera you're not familiar with, probably not the best decision in the world.
Yeah, like be comfortable in yourself and also like in your body. You know, I think anyone wants to really be carrying around kilograms and kilograms on themselves, and then the one memory that you have of the holiday is how much your back hurt or how annoyed you were as to everything you were carrying and slowing your friend or your partner down or whatever. So these are considerations to have, and I think our kit definitely reflects that. I'm sure there's something that maybe you could have swapped, maybe added. Same for me, maybe I could have brought something else, but I think this is kind of part of it. You do and you learn.
Yeah, and I think the general message to take home is essentially there's a million options out there for you. Macro OM systems, color science Canon, pro level bird photography, maybe the Nikon or a Sony. Realistically, it's just what you're comfortable with. I'm almost done, I swear. I think on that note, it's time for us to wrap up. So let us know what you thought in the comments, or what you're okay. It's never gonna happen.
That's right. I think we've got detractors already about our choice of kit.
Okay. On that note, let us know what you thought in the comments. Tell us what your ideal travel kit is, and we will wrap up before that cow comes and makes us wrap up.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.